WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. JW Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. We come to you on Tuesdays, each and every Tuesday at 2:30. There's a replay at 7 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday on Channel 16, Star Communications. Also on Tuesday at 2:30, this is simulcast on WCLN Radio. I want to thank everybody for continuing to be with us over 10 years now on the air. We're bringing a friend to the show back, a friend to a lot of people in I'd say Sampson and the 5th District, Robert Gilmore, now will be referred to as Judge Robert Gilmore. That will take an effect sometime in the next few weeks, Robert. I want to open this morning just to kind of get your thoughts on the experience that you have just gone through. This is your first time to step up and say, hey, I'm going to run for a political office, and it's for a district court judge seat. You won that seat literally in every county that voted. People stepped up. Talk to us about that experience. It's almost like you just walked into a world, and maybe you can give us a fresh look at your perspective from the political world, what you saw and what you experienced.
It is not for the faint of heart. I will say that. It's extremely humbling in the end when you see all these votes roll in, win, lose, or draw. It's extremely humbling to see how many people turn out and they put their future, they put their government in your hands, no matter what office you're running for. And that's extremely humbling. The process itself is a tiring process. What people don't see, you see on the back end, you get these glossy mailers in the mailbox, or you see, somebody out there on the trail speaking somewhere. What you don't see is, the run around in the house trying to get ready and trying to get the kids out the door and trying to, figure out what's going on with the family today so you can go do that. The late hours, the phone calls, all the things that go into not only voter outreach, but also funding a campaign and making sure you have the resources to run a campaign. The fact is that in a district as big as ours, we voted over 100,000 voters in this election. In a district that big, you can't talk to everybody. Whether you'd like to or not, you can't. There's not enough. Literally, if you talk for 24 hours a day, you're not going to be able to reach every voter. So you have to go out and raise money. You have to go out and do those things, and it's a tough process. But I think that it's the greatest process in the world. I mean, it really makes you earn every step of the way. And there's so many beautiful things that happen. When I was out in Kenansville one day, this lady came in with her granddaughter. Our granddaughter was about my son Cole's age, maybe a year younger or so. She was in the 1st grade. And she stopped and talked to me, and she got one of my brochures, and she read it with her granddaughter. And her granddaughter looked up at me and said, I'm going to vote for you. And I laughed, and I said, well, thank you so much, sweetheart. Thank you for coming with your grandma to vote. And they went in to vote, and they came back out, and her grandma waited for me to get done talking to another voter, and her granddaughter said, I voted for you. And her grandma said, she's serious. When it got to your name on the ballot, she asked me to pick her up, and she took the pen and helped me, bubble your name in. And so when something like that happens, it's just such a beautiful thing to hear and see. And on that end, all of that hard work becomes eminently worth it to see and feel that. But I think anybody that puts their name in for public service and it goes through that process, they have a new respect from me because, a lot of people don't see it as work, but it's a lot of long hours. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of stress on the family dynamic, on the work dynamic. Every bit of it suffers to a degree in order to put that out there. And but I wouldn't have traded that experience for the world. It was a great experience all over all 4 of these counties.
One of the things that strikes me too is you're talking, of course, folks, I'm sure remember you being on this show a few weeks ago, and we touted not only your academic background, but your background as a prosecutor, your background as a defense attorney, summa cum laude in both undergraduate and law school, something that's not many people can say that. Clearly a scholarly person in the field of law. What do you think, with all that said, what do you think kind of gave you that sense of relationship to folks? Many times people say, well, I voted for Robert simply because I felt like I had something in common. You know, I really talk to people about how scholarly you are, and at the same time, I know that, including myself, a lot of our listeners, you know, are not considered that, but at the same time, there's something about you that you relate to people. And I want to try to get your sense of what that is. And of course, I'll listen to the folks. Trust me, I'll get calls. I can tell you why he relates. But I want to just kind of get what you felt when you're talking to people. How did that feeling of relationship?
Yeah, first I'll say I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a regular guy from a regular family, and I've lived a regular life. You know, what I'd call regular life around here. Mm-hmm. You know, we went to the same grocery stores as everybody else, to Piggly Wiggly, you know, what have you. I mean, I still see myself as somebody working in my dad's shop as much as I do a lawyer. You know, I don't necessarily, I've never felt a shift or a change from who I was. But I also am just extremely interested in people. I can sit with a client and beyond the confines of their case and exactly what we're looking at that time, we're liable to spend 20 or 30 minutes just talking about them and their life and what's going on, and, you know, trying to give them encouraging words for things that I see as the real source of their problem, mm-hmm. how they can fix that. And that's where that thing on the law license comes from, attorney and counselor at law. That's where that term counselor comes from. You're not only there to advise people on law, you're also there to kind of handle some of those other things too and try to help guide them in a good direction. And so I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy getting to know people. I enjoy hearing their experience, no matter what it is. I enjoy hearing it. And I think that is helpful. My brother would say I talk to a stop sign, so maybe that explains it. But you know, I've just never forgot who I was or where I came from, and that's still who I am. That's who I'm going to be. The day I die is just a guy from Keener, mm-hmm. at the end of the day. And so I think that still shines through to people more so than, you know, he's a lawyer or he's going to be a judge. I have people come up randomly to me in the parking lot, and they'll whip up beside me and, hey, Robert, you know, roll the window down. Mm-hmm. And I might be their lawyer, but they feel like they can talk to me that mm-hmm. way, and that's a great thing.
That ability to be relatable to the folks that are in the environment that you live in seems to be critical. So when I look at the counties that were involved, and we're talking Sampson, Duplin, Onslow, Greene County, every one of those counties, without question, voted for you to be a district court judge in the 5th District. That says something, because it's not just one county, it's not just one group of people, it was the entire district. How did that make you? Were you even anticipating that?
I was not. I did not know that we would win every county in the district, or you know, get the most votes in every county in the district. I really thought some would be, you know, another way or perhaps closer, just because of a variety of factors. But it was very humbling. I think people right now in Eastern North Carolina, they want conservative judges. They want judges that are going to follow the law as it's written. They want judges that are not going to be activists on the bench, and those are the things they want. It was very interesting. This district was very interesting to me because Sampson and Duplin and Jones are somewhat similar. Very rural, very farm-based. You know, and I can relate to a lot of things. You know, Onslow has a different makeup. You know, you've got a major military base mm-hmm. there. You have every type of business you can think of. You have a much larger population. and a population that is centered from around the country because those people went to serve in the United States Marine Corps. A lot of them retired there. And so there are not, maybe a third of the county is, an ancestral group where they've been there for generations. The other 2/3 of folks that may have lived there 20 years or less. And so that's different than Sampson and Duplin and Jones counties where, people have lived here for generations, most people that live here. And so that was different. What was interesting was my wife, who is from Delaware, moved down to Raleigh when she was 14. She could go down there, and they love her. I mean, they've told me countless times, we're going to adopt your wife. We could take her or leave you, but we love your wife.
They're going to vote for her instead of you.
They're going to vote for her. And so she was fantastic with everybody, and everybody is always wonderful to me, but she was a star down there. She was a star player, and she was very helpful. They could talk to her about their grandmother who lived in Philadelphia, and Ashley's grandparents lived in Philadelphia, and it was so interesting. But I think the core and the thread that joined all four of those counties was the need for a conservative judge, the need for a conservative judiciary. That really kind of rang true for everyone throughout this district, and I think that mattered greatly.
The idea of winning in that capacity with that kind of dynamic sets the stage, I guess, for the obvious reality. And you're young enough, obviously, by looking at you and knowing you for all these years, that all these opportunities start unfolding. I want to talk a bit about that when we come back from break and kind of look at where you may or may not see Judge Robert Gilmore in the future, 5, 10, even 15 years down the road, because the opportunities now do avail for all these things to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Judge-to-be Robert Gilmore, just recently elected district judge here in the 5th District. Stay tuned, call a friend. We'll be back in one moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. Star Communications, Channel 16, WCLN Radio. We Should Know has been on there a little over 10 years now. We're just excited today to have a newly elected official. Someone was just on our show a few weeks back. Robert Gilmore, an attorney here in Clinton, voted in as judge for the 4th prosecutorial district, I will say. And we've been talking about in the first segment, Robert, this concept of the judiciary and what that looks like. And we've put out there in the conversation a district court judge. But when you look at the judicial system in the state of North Carolina, what does your eyes see? Because, we've heard everything from the state Supreme Court to Supreme Court justices and all this kind of thing. Tell us what you see from where you sit now as entering that, quote, system, judicial system.
We have somewhat of a mixed bag right now. Obviously, we have the recent confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who I believe to be one of the most impressive candidates I've ever seen for the United States Supreme Court. I mean, I think anybody that watched those hearings, you couldn't help but be impressed by her intellect and her thoughtfulness in everything she did up there. And so, you have a Supreme Court, depending on what your view is of what the court should be, there's that makeup. You have a threat to pack the court right now that exists by more the Democratic side of things, that they're going to add Supreme Court justices in order to, in their mind, change the balance of that court. It appears if we hold on to the Senate through the Georgia runoffs, that will be not able to happen. And then from there, you have, on a more local levels, our state Supreme Court got way out of whack. We went from a 4-3 Republican majority on the state Supreme Court in 2014 to, as of right now, a 6-1 Democratic majority. Paul Newby being the only Republican on there until this election, and he's now down to 974 votes between he and Sherry Beasley. Who knows how that race is going to turn out? But it does appear like we've elected Phil Burker Jr. and Tamara Berenger to those seats. So we're starting to chip back, but it'll be 2022 before we have any chance at a majority again. The Court of Appeals recently in this election elected a Republican majority. And so we've got these different things happening. And that shift on the Supreme Court was due to some quirks, some weird electoral quirks in terms of one justice race was a nonpartisan race and the rest of them were partisan, and the parties were flipped in a nonpartisan race. So if you voted for all Republicans on top in the other judicial seats and you presumed the Republicans on top in this one, you were wrong. And that bore out in the evidence by the fact that you had a Democratic Supreme Court challenger with not strong name recognition that was winning in counties like Union County, which is a solid Republican county. And we had the split last time in 2018 in Barbara Jackson's seat where you had 2 Republicans running and 1 Democrat. Who's going to win that? The split vote took over. So, we've lost those seats due to some quirks, and then Mark Martin's retirement to go to be a dean of a law school in Virginia. Those affect the makeup of the court. What I see overall in the court system beyond those issues and the makeup of it is we have, for really the first time that I can tell, Superior Court judges at times in some of our more liberal counties just issuing orders that affect the entire state in regards to elections, in regards to laws, and just boom, there it is. And then it's endless litigation after that. There was one order that said because the legislature was unconstitutionally gerrymandered, their law should be stricken down because they didn't have the power to make it. Well, if we go back to 2002, the Democrats drew a legislature that was struck down as improperly drawn. So does that mean that when I go back through and I look at laws that were created between 2000 and 2002, that now I can make the argument those laws are now moot and void 20 years later because they were passed by, as this judge said, a usurper legislature? So when you have situations where judges are becoming extremely political in their rulings, and we have those situations happening, and there being orders are being issued that go statewide, that's a concern. I can't hold a Superior Court judge in Buncombe County to account. You can't hold a Superior Court judge in Mecklenburg County to account. I can hold the legislature to account. We all can hold the legislature to account. Our legislature welcomes being held to account. Every 2 years, you have the opportunity to say, I like what you voted for, I didn't like what you voted for, and I can vote you out of office if I don't like or do like what you voted for. But that judge issues some sort of statewide order, what can we do? We're stuck. And so that's why 2 years later, 57%, large majority of North Carolina voted for voter ID, and we still don't have it. And that's why. It's because of a combination of a federal district court judge and state superior court judges that are not elected, statewide, not dealing with a lot of those issues, said, yeah, well, we think it's unconstitutional. Even though you, the people, voted for it, we think it's unconstitutional. That's troubling. That
seems to be contrary to the process of our government or the form of our government, that if one judge can do that and it's totally contrary to the opinion of the majority vote of the people, it's almost the opposite of what my thought process as the judiciary as being part of that three-legged stool, so to speak.
Well, it is, and then it becomes that that one leg of that stool comes off and just start beating the other two legs.
Exactly.
And until the stool falls, and so it's very concerning when you step back and think that the logic was this is an unconstitutional act because it violates the Equal Protection Clause, what have you. Well, that means that you believe a majority of the people, by voting for it, were acting in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. That's a legal nullity when you really think about it. I mean, this idea, there are implications within that thought process that are very disturbing. But for sometimes, the judiciary can get out of control and you can wind up with this is the result we want to reach, how do we get there? And that's the definition of judicial activism. This is the result I want, how do I get there? Instead of what does the law say, this is what it says, okay, then this is the result. It's deductive rather than inductive. It doesn't build up, it starts from the top and works its way back down. And that's part of what being a conservative judge is about, is doing that logic of I start with the law, and wherever it leads me, it leads me. That may lead me to results I don't like. That may lead me to results that are not popular, but that's where it is. You go the other route, and it can be problematic. Which,
and again, what I hear you saying is that personal opinion gets enveloped into that process. Then it taints the system as it was designed to stand.
And then we wind up with what lawyers call bad law.
Yeah.
Okay, we wind up with a situation where the law does not fit what we knew it to be before, and now we have to figure out a way to work within the framework of this. Now we've got this weird quirk out there. It's almost like a bone being out of place or something like that, but you can't get it back in. So now we have to work within this new awkward framework. That's concerning. That's where we are, and that's where it's become, is as hyper partisan as it has. Some of these rulings and some of these decisions have become so hyper partisan. For me, I had some people ask me, well, why are judges' party labels on the ballot? Why is that important? For me, the way I looked at that was it was important to tell the voter, to the degree that a party label can, this is going to be the philosophy of this judge. This judge is more likely to have more little L liberal judicial philosophies, and this judge is more likely to have little C conservative judicial philosophies based on their political party, more likely, not necessarily 100% true, but more likely. But would that ever impact for me how I treat someone coming before me? No. I don't care what the political affiliation is of someone coming before me. I don't care what the political bent of an issue is coming before me. The answer is the same no matter what party it is. And you have to be consistent with that. Sometimes that means today that ruling may be very well in favor of someone who you like, or someone whose position you like, but tomorrow it may be contrary to it on the same set of facts. They may be on the wrong side of it. You have to be consistent. You can't say, well, yeah, but that's my friend. You can't do that. The core of it has to be the same. If you start dancing, you start going outside of the bounds of that, it's going to come back to bite you every time, because eventually you're going to run into that case where that gets fed back to you. And the great judges I've known, one of them just got elected to the Court of Appeals, Jeff Carpenter, a great friend of mine, Superior Court judge from Union County. That's one of the things he taught me in the practice of law. He said, hey, it's got to be the same no matter who's in front of you, because if you start trying to make it work, if you start trying to massage it out, you're going to regret it later.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to kind of set the stage. I want to segue into something that's huge picture and somehow try to plug our conversation into that, and that's the Constitution of the United States, how that plays out, and the three critical parts of that Constitution. I want you to speak to that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking with Robert Gilmore, soon to be sworn in as Judge Robert Gilmore. We'll be back in one moment.
Many things have been stolen away during this time of uncertainty. No crowds to cheer on their favorite teams. Applause and pageantry have been stripped away. Thieves are looking to make your home empty and silent. Star Communications has the answer you are looking for. Security by Star. Automation and affordability along with friendly service makes for a security choice that is sure to keep your family cheering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're kind of at the halfway point of this show called We Should Know. I'm JW Simmons. As we come back, I want to remind you, this show is aired on Channel 16 Star Communications, WCLN Radio, but also I want to remind you that it's also uploaded to a number of the social media platforms to include Facebook, YouTube, those kinds of things. Oftentimes I'll have folks to email us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com, weshouldknowedu@gmail.com, and ask me, well, where can I find this show? Where can I find the show you had with Judge Robert Gilmore? Well, you can easily go to the YouTube platform or Facebook, pick it up there. Constantly there's reviews to different folks we talk to. So thank you again for being with us. We're coming up on the third segment, so it's my pleasure to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, if you hadn't been with us, Robert Gilmore, who is soon to be Judge Robert Gilmore once he's sworn into that capacity. He just won that seat as a district court judge here in the 5th Prosecutorial District. Robert, again, thank you for being with us, and also thank you for deciding to run for office and be a public servant. Obviously, you may be stepping away from a more lucrative background as a defense attorney, but you've got a background as a prosecutor, defense attorney, office right here in Clinton, North Carolina. We've been talking a lot about the judiciary and on the state level, and you alluded to Supreme Court and federal judges. When I think about that whole area that I know that you're dialed into and neck deep and want to talk about is this area of the Constitution of the United States. And I'll toss out there that, I challenge people to pull it up and try to read it, because there's articles and there's sections and everything else on with the Constitution. But then you've got the Declaration of Independence, then you got the Bill of Rights. Those three pieces. It's almost like there's two three-legged stools I want to talk about. I want you to touch on that for us, and then talk about the judiciary as it relates to the legislative branch and also as it relates to the executive branch. We have, at least in my observation, some folks a long time ago did some hard thinking to come up with the way this system is set up. And you're a conservative judge. Saying that, does that mean that you look at the Constitution and what the Constitution says is what the Constitution is? Because you do know, and I know that there are people to look at it and go, well, it's not relevant for now.
That's
is
right.
that a good way to open up this?
Yes, that is perfect. So a conservative, in the kind of modern day meaning, maybe post 1980s meaning of what conservative judge means is the law says what it says, it means what it says, and we start from the black letter of that law, and if the questions we have are answered in the black letter of that law, we look no further, okay? I think Justice Barrett put this perfect, that you don't go into legislative histories that can be somewhat manipulated, somewhat tinkered with through the legislative process, and, a legislator jumping up at the end of a debate and saying, well, I won't record it for history that this is what we mean by this, and that's put down in there. She says, no, the people have to be able to rely on the black letter of that law and what it says, meaning like, those black letters on that page, what that says is what the law is. And we don't get to come in and say, well, but we really meant something different. What has emerged over the past 20 or 30 years, this idea that the Constitution is a living document, okay? This is the non-conservative judges, what I would say little L liberal justices and judges, is that the Constitution's a living document. It can mean different things. We can expand these things to cover different groups, to cover different ideas beyond what they were originally written and considered to do, and that the Constitution should be elastic in that way, and those definitions should be elastic in that way. Who does the Equal Protection Clause cover, et cetera, et cetera. Those are issues that were first started. Now it's even into the Second Amendment, and what does that mean is a major one as well. And so Justice Scalia and Justice Thomas and Justice Alito and Justice Barrett, they all have taken the Justice Gorsuch and Kavanaugh have taken the position that what's written there is what it means. The other four justices, or including Justice Roberts, but the other justices take the position of the Constitution's living document, and we can kind of, tweak it to a degree to fit different things, and that's problematic. The reason why that's problematic is because people need to have finality in the law. If the idea is that you're presumed to know the law, what's the old saying? Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
That's exactly
okay.
Right.
That's the famous saying that you used to get told by the law enforcement officer to stop. If ignorance of the law is no excuse, then the law must be somewhat clear for people to read. I believe that law should be accessible to the common person. The greatest appellate judges that I've known, I'll give a shout out to a judge named Rich Dietz. Rich doesn't know me from anything. He's a Court of Appeals judge. We've never met. I love his opinions when he writes them in North Carolina because they are succinct. They're really well written, but they're written in a very plain spoken way, such that the person on the street can go pick that opinion up, read it, understand it, and know what it says. By that same token, what can we expect people to do when they read the black letter of a law and it reads a certain way? Do we expect that the public is going back to read legislative histories and interpret things? No. They should be able to read that statute and have a clear understanding of what that statute means. If there are ambiguities, then, and there are things where legislative history can be helpful, where a word has not been defined, or there are multiple meanings to a word, and what did this mean, then great. That's what we're supposed to do, is look back to some of those histories and see which way that was going. But too often that is used as a sword, not a shield. That idea of a legislative history, it's used to protect, it's used to get to the next step of where someone wants to go. And that prevents the public, that prevents the regular person from being able to be in tune with the law, which is so different than what it was when the founders wrote the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Constitution. Lawyers were... There were a lot of lawyers around because people read the law. Mm-hmm. They learned the law that way. And now it's gotten so complex and in such a way that can't happen.
When I look at that and I think about where we are, particularly, and we're still in the judicial branch of that three-legged stool, it seems that there are those that would like to use mass media to interpret what the legality is. And it puts a perplexing situation for those justice officers, police officers, and others that are out there trying to bring to court people that violate that law. And it puts them in a bad situation because they see people that become destructive. And I'm all for freedom of speech, don't get me wrong, but the destructive part of it, where if I own a store, if they're burning my store, I've got a problem with that because I didn't have anything to do with it. But so the point I'm trying to get here is how do we deal with that, and how do we deal with social unrest in today's world with all of these medias giving us instantaneous information, and what is the responsibility of those that are reporting that to report accuracy and not hyperbole?
You just hit a question that we could probably talk about for 6 months. It's of great concern. So, one thing that has happened over the past few years in the media is there will be a big news story of some variety. And we will get the breaking news, the most sensational parts of it, all these things, and oftentimes revolving around court cases. we'll get the most sensationalistic side of it, oftentimes a very one-sided view of it. There are facts that come out 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18 months later. The media beast has moved on from that. We never hear the facts of it. What we hear is that front end, and that's all anybody ever knows because the public consciousness has moved on.
Absolutely.
And what crystallizes in people's minds is that first sensationalistic thing they heard. That's nobody's fault. People are working. People are trying to put food on the table. People are trying to feed their family. They're trying to go on vacation. They're trying to put their kids through college. They don't have time to follow this court case all the way through the system to find out, okay, so that guy did in fact have a gun the whole time.
Absolutely.
You don't find that part out. And the problem is that we have a media now, the news used to be a lost leader. The news used to didn't make money. The news lost money, and where the value of the news was that people tuned in, so you stayed for that next show where people paid, where all the advertisers were, and they paid all the money to be on the shows. Now the news is a money maker, and so the news has to remain always sensationalistic. I mean, for the better part of 3 years, we heard about how the president colluded with Russia, and every day there were phrases like the walls are closing in, it's all going to be over in a matter of weeks. Never happened, but in that meantime, CNN and a lot of networks made a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Okay? And so, and that goes back to now we have, everybody lives in two bubbles. And you can hear what you want to hear. There's enough media out there now that if you want to hear a particular story, you can hear only that particular story.
All you got to do is stay tuned to that channel.
If you'll stay tuned, they'll keep telling you what you want to hear because they know what you want to hear. They know everything about you. They know from technology. They know from apps. They know from everything you do, everything you want to hear, and they put it forward every day for you. And so it's very dangerous. I don't know how we solve it or resolve it. I think we as people have to be willing to question. And it's funny, the people that I think tend to question the most are blue-collar working people. They tend to question the most, and they do the best job of getting honest media.
We want to continue to discuss on our last break. We've got a lot to talk about, so just stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with Robert Gilmore, and the subjects we're talking about, I know, is things that many people have been wrestling with, is how do we process a lot of the information we're seeing, a lot of things we're hearing, and there's a huge anxiety in our society today. Stay tuned.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the show is We Should Know. I'm JW Simmons, your host, and I appreciate you being with us. Each and every week we bring you a different subject from people that are not from my opinion, but from the people that's doing the job and planning to do the job. And today we're talking about a subject that clearly is something that we probably need at least a semester or maybe a couple of years of just intense discussion about. But we're talking with Robert Gilmore, who's recently won election as district court judge in the 5th Prosecutorial District. Robert, again, thanks for being with us and helping us reason through some things on a very 20,000-foot level. And clearly, there's a lot of stuff we're not going to cover today. This is our last segment. But we were in that process of discussing the relationship of that, quote, three-legged stool as you view it through the lens of the Declaration of Independence. That three-legged stool makes up the judicial, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. We just had what appears to be, we'll have a new president and vice president. The executive branch of the United States is going to be changing because it appears the majority of voters have voted for that. And the other things that's happening in the legislative branch. To your point, and the world that you're viewing this through from the judicial branch, everything is plugged into each other. So how do you see us as what I do and what other people does, it's got a more lengthy show. How do we continue to educate the public and remind the public of the importance and critical aspects of all three branches of this thing we call government?
Well, first I'll say that I think the American people understand the three branches of this government much greater than we give them than many pundits give them credit for. Okay, in North Carolina, we voted for Donald Trump for president. Mm-hmm. We sent Tom Tillis back to the Senate. Mm-hmm. We sent Roy Cooper to the governor's mansion for a second term. And we sent a legislature, more Republican legislature back than we had before. And we elected conservative judges up and down the ballot to a greater degree than we elected the President of the United States by about 70,000 votes, not an inconsequential margin in some of those court of appeals.
And we elected
races.
a lieutenant governor.
We elected a conservative lieutenant governor. And so, in what appears, race is still very close, but it appears a Democratic attorney general. And so you have a people that are tuned in that there's different branches of government, I think, and the idea of checks and balances. All those races did not turn out the way I wanted them to turn out. Okay, but I think the people are much more tuned than we believe sometimes on the top end. All these pundits would have us believe. The important thing to remember is that this experiment has lasted for almost 250 years. Wars haven't destroyed it. Pandemics haven't destroyed it. All these different things have not destroyed it. We've had changes of administration that people were very fearful of. We've had changes of administration people didn't like. We went back before and had one president not get reelected, and then he came back and got reelected again later in Grover Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. So, this country is as strong of a country as there is in the world, and it's because of its people. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, those things fit together to me because the idea of the Declaration of Independence is that we, the people, are choosing to have a government of us, for us, by us. Mm-hmm. And we're going to determine what that's going to be. We're not going to be dictated to by a king. We're not going to be dictated to by someone from a far-off land. We're going to govern ourselves. The most revolutionary thing that ever happened before. And then George Washington had the foresight to not be a king, but be a president, be an executive, and let the power go, mm-hmm. which is what he did after 2 terms. And so, that's where the Declaration of Independence fits in, is those freedoms that we talked about there. They were enshrined in the Bill of Rights. Madison enshrined them in the Bill of Rights because, some people back then said, we don't need to write these things down. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows that you have the right to free speech, and you have the right to free exercise of religion, you have the right to bear arms, you have all these things. We don't need to write it down because then someone could try to take it away from us. It should be presumed. And Madison said, no, if we do not write it down, it most certainly will be taken from us. We must put this down as a statement, as a Bill of Rights.
Just as we do law.
Yes, beyond what we do in the articles of the Constitution. We need these 10 amendments, this Bill of Rights here, so that it's clear for generations moving forward that this is where we stand. Madison was right. And so, I think that, let not your heart be troubled. There are things that are that may happen. We still have some things going on in the presidency. We still have some questions that have to be answered, and there are things going on with lawsuits and investigations and things such as that. But there will be an answer, mm-hmm. and America will survive. Mm-hmm. And what I would encourage people to do is do just what they did this time. We had record turnout here in Sampson County for votes. 74% of registered voters in Sampson County turned out to vote. Now, Mr. JW, you're older than I am. You may remember a time when that happened. I don't remember a time when that ever happened. I look back through as far as I can see in data, and that had never happened before.
I don't know that it has, and I'm sure somebody will do the research and email us and let us know, but I cannot imagine anything beyond that.
And that's what people have to do. That is the only way we keep government, and government remains for us, by us, is if we turn out and shape it. And when you say your vote doesn't count, right now there are 974 votes splitting the Chief Justice of North Carolina, maybe less right now. That was this morning, splitting that race. That is 9 votes, roughly 9 votes per county, maybe 10 votes per county. And that means if 5 people in each county vote the opposite way, you have a different outcome.
Or 5 people that didn't vote, voted.
That's right. The Attorney General's race, at one point on election night, I don't know what the spread is now, but it's as little as 10, 20,000 votes statewide. That sounds like a lot of votes. When you divide it between these 100 counties, it's not very many votes. It's somewhere between 100 and 200 votes per county. Again, that's an extremely consequential office. That office determines how every lawsuit involving a law in the state of North Carolina is defended on the appellate level. Mm-hmm. And all sorts of consumer protection and other investigations the Attorney General's office does. Extremely important office. Your vote matters because if you and 200 other people say the same thing in your county, and you would have all voted the same way, and y'all stayed home, well, there you go.
Yeah, that's the deciding factor.
Yeah, you get what you paid for or what you didn't pay for. And so I would encourage people to keep turning out, keep voting, keep the faith. The test of your faith in a particular belief or a particular idea is tested not when things are easy. It's easy to say, I believe something when you win. It's easy to say, I'm with it when things are going good. The real test is when you hit some bumps. And can you keep the faith? Can you keep going? Can you keep that momentum moving? That's how change happens. Change does not happen just by we're going to win every time. And so I really believe that we have the strongest country in the world because of that.
One of the things that strikes me in this conversation is when we look at those 3 branches of government, and we think about the legislative branch, we think about the judicial branch, we think about the executive branch, we also hear the word balance. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that going and coming out of this election that we are now balanced, or are we not balanced? I don't see any one branch being taken over.
Well, that is in North Carolina, we certainly have a divided government. In the United States government, it appears we're going to have a divided government. And that creates balance. What I think we have to do is find those areas of common ground for the working people, where this is something beyond my role. My role is interpreting law and making decisions on those on very specific things. But when we talk about the legislative branch, talk about the executive branch, they got to work together to try to find things for blue collar people, for regular people that it's going to greatly impact their lives. How can we make sure everything is operating correctly and people have opportunities to grow their business, hire more people, have more successful economies, send their kids to the schools they want to send them to, and have the things that they want to have in life? What can we do to encourage more business? What can we do to encourage those increases? My job is to not knock that off the tracks. Mm-hmm. As a judge, my job is to almost be unknown, almost be the force that you don't even really quite realize is there, because I shouldn't be knocking things off tracks. I shouldn't be making the news.
You're just ensuring the tracks are still there.
That's right, and I'm ensuring the tracks are fair and proper. So, that's hopefully how things work moving forward. You've got, two systems working together, and the judiciary is just there kind of quietly making sure everything remains as it should and solving any disparities between those things or disputes between those things. And hopefully that's what's going to happen. We've elected some great judges this time. I don't know if I'm included in that. I hope I am, but we've elected some great judges, and I look forward to serving the people of this district.
Well, I'll give you about 15 seconds. Anything you want to say before we've got to go, and you know how quick this close happens. So you got about 15 seconds.
I want to thank the people of this district for putting their faith in me and electing me to this position. I will make you proud. I won't disappoint you. I'm going to be there working hard every day, bringing the kind of values that we've talked about to this position. And if you ever need to hold me accountable, most of you know where I live in this county. Most of you know who I am, and you can come find me and let me know what a great job or terrible job I'm doing. But thank you so much for your confidence.
Robert, thank you for being with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week right here. And as always, as we go to close, stay safe and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.